Super League 14 on the horizon, joined by Craig Harrison, players agent of note, John Kear, done everything in the game. We're going to look at some of the young players perhaps to look out for. I'll just start by phrasing that with, are we talking quality or quantity when it comes to youngsters? Do we have enough coming through, and do we have enough good ones coming through, do you think?
I don't think there's any doubt we've got plenty of young players coming through. I think it's been forced upon us in part because of the situation in Australia, where obviously financially they can offer so much better deals than we can, and there's a bit of a drain out of Super League 2 to the NRL, but I think that's allowing opportunities for young players to really come to the fore, either young players through the systems such as at Leeds or Wigan or Saints, or people from the Championship who are getting the first shot within Super League.
A couple of people you look after, you've seen go to New Zealand and play for the Warriors over there. Do you see that as becoming an option that perhaps wasn't there, something that a loophole that perhaps we need to close here, look after our youngsters a bit better?
Oh, it'll definitely happen. There's no doubt it's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. I think you'll see a exodus, unless they move an exempt on the cap for young kids, because some of these kids are getting offered £6,000–8,000 full time. So why would you not want to go over there and play for probably double that, 3 times that, in the lifestyle and everything that comes with it? So there is no doubt, in my opinion, unless we change and give homegrown exempt from the cap, 100% going to happen.
But there are some exciting players we saw last year who we would hope might develop, and I'll just start with one, say Morgan Escaray at Caplan Dragons. Obviously took his chance when Brent Webb was injured, made a real name for himself. Do you think that obviously there is such a thing as second season syndrome, or is he somebody else we should be looking out for maybe?
Oh, I think you're definitely to look out for him. I mean, it sounds a bit sillier when he's an international player saying he's still an emerging player, but he is, because he's a very, very good player, but there's still faults within his game, and I think that was indicated when they went for Brent Webb as soon as he became fit again. But he's exciting. They've given him the number 2 squad number, so he may well be featuring on the wing. But I also think this kid William Bartow as well. I mean, I was impressed for him for France. I thought he was one of France's better players in the World Cup, and it will be interesting to see if he can oust one of the established Giroud or Bosque from the halfback sort of situation over there.
We look at somebody like Jamie Shaw, say, who was at Hull, who obviously impressed in a couple of particularly big games towards the end of last year. He's now fighting against Shannon McDonnell coming back from injury. If you were the coach of Hull, would you be tempted to go for the young player ahead of the more experienced one?
John's just said it, opportunity, development is opportunity of any young kid who gets the chance. If you read the story on him, I think Radford saved him from leaving the game. It convinced him to come back and give it a go, which he did. If they don't get the opportunity, you won't see how good they are. If they don't get the game time, most of my young players are very insecure, so they're getting into the squad, they've got a lot of issues. If the coach actually said, you know what, you're in for the next 6 games anyway, you would see a different thing. So 100% would I play? I'd play the youngster every time, because I think as a player, as a fan, first off, if you're going to watch a game, there's nothing as exciting to turn up to a game and watch a young kid. It's what it's all about.
Perhaps nothing as exciting either about watching a young kid who can determine the course of a game. So we're looking at maybe half-backs, which is an area that, again, we've identified after the World Cup that perhaps we're not blessed in. But there are some coming through. I mean, for example, how do you think Bradford will go with Lee Gaskill maybe taking one of those half-back roles?
I'm probably biased on this one, because I think the best halfback will be, I think he'll make the England squad next year, is Luke Gale. I've been a big believer in him since his thing. He's never had a lot of good go forward props. He's always done his best behind the pack. That's been thingy. I think he proved in the night. He walks on water when he's playing behind a good pack. He makes it happen. I think this year's his year. He's trained like how he's ready, and I think if Bradford get a bit of go forward, you'll see a lad make a massive claim next year for an England spot. So,
and if we look at sort of the likes of Wigan, who obviously are trying to retain the double, which is a tremendous feat, and done on the back of, again, blooding some youngsters, is this the season for somebody like Sam Powell maybe in the halfbacks to really make a name for himself?
I think their halfbacks are pretty well established, to tell you the truth. I thought Blake Green, obviously, he won the Harry Sunderland trophy last year and he was tremendous. Matty Smith should have been there or thereabout for the England team, so their halfbacks are pretty well established. But I think the opportunity for a youngster at Wigan is on the wing. Obviously Pat Richards has gone back to the NRL after being a mainstay of the team and a quality player, and I think there's a young lad called Burgess, not the Sam type,
Right.
the Joe type. And
It's not Julie.
no, and it's not one of the offspring. It's totally different branch, but he's an outstanding wingman. He really is. He's big, he can move, and he knows how to play the game. Also plays a bit of centre, but I see an opportunity for him on the wing, and I think we'll be looking at him as an established wing three-quarter for the Wigan Warriors this season.
And again, people like Lewis Tierney are in their squad. He's going to be given a chance. It might not be 2014, but he's got something about him.
Yeah, he has. And Ryan Hampshire, you know, I mean, he's another good player, a Wakefield kid who's gone over to Wigan and has got the world at his feet. Because one thing about Sean Wayne, which I admire greatly about him, is he believes he's got some quality within his young players, and he'll stick by those young players. And if they do make an error or two, he sees that as part of their development and growing up and maturation.
We mentioned injuries and how youngsters come in and then maybe the senior player becomes fit again at the beginning of the following year. Where does the youngster go? Look at a club like Leeds, who've got, for example, let's say, vying for the same sort of position, Stevie Ward and Liam Sutcliffe, and ahead of them some very established players who've seen success. Do you think there is still a window for them to make a contribution in 2014?
Well, yeah, because of our game, there's always injuries. But bottom line is, if are you asking me if Sinfield and Maguire will play? If it will play, fact. Don't matter. I've heard it said so many times. If a lot of my young players will say, "Oh, I had a great game at weekend," and I'll say, "You'll not play next week," and they'll say, "Well," I said, "No, guarantee you won't, because that's it. Coaches have got the stress, they've got the pressure, they know what they know. They know somebody who's done it." Should there be games like in the Premiership football where you do, or the League Cup where you do put the 100%, because if they don't get the game time, they don't come on. Now maybe that's the thing they do with. I know in the Challenge Cup they start doing it, haven't they? They start giving them more opportunities. But to your answer, fact, they'll play the senior players, and that's not just a player thing. It's the way it is.
But in Leeds' case, Phil, they've got to start looking to the next season.
Absolutely.
And the season after. Because Kevin Sinfield's 30 plus, Danny Maguire's 30 plus, Rob Burrow, you know, they're all just tipping over that edge. And if they all tip over at the same time, the team will cascade. So what they've got to do is start replacing them now. And I think Coach McDermott's smart enough to realise that. And I think there'll be a fair bit of football for Sutcliffe.
In terms of, we've said now there needs to be a bridge between the Championship and Super League to give young players a chance. But it can also work the other way. We've talked a lot in the game about how Salford can go this year. They're the wild card, if you like, because they've been completely rebuilt. But you sent a couple of players over there who are young lads who you think, given a fair wind, will take some stopping in Super League.
Greg Johnson's an outstanding wingman. There's him and Jason Walton who joined there, and I'd class them as young players in their early 20s. They were at Super League clubs. It didn't quite happen for them for whatever reason. They went back to the Championship. Now they've been picked up by Brian Noble, and I think they're both very, very good players. But I'm really excited about Greg Johnson. I mean, anybody who watched the Championship last year, I watched him play 30 plus games, and I never once saw him tackled by the first man up. He always either made a half break, landed on his front, or betted the man completely. His footwork is sensational. It'll be an absolute joy for Salford fans to watch.
And you know Huddersfield quite well from the links that you've got between your club and them. Somebody like Jake Conner, Academy International, given a small taste at the back end of last year, looked a very talented young player.
Yes, he's trained with us actually a little bit, and you see the skills he's got, and he can throw a long pass to his left or to his right at full tilt, and he can put 15-20 metres on it, and it's right on the button. He's a highly skilled young player. He's tough enough as well. We've noticed that from training, so he's certainly got an opportunity. I also like this young second rower, Pete Aspinall, as well.
John, come on,
a very, very good player. He really is. I think he could play centre or second row, but he's a heck of an athlete, and really has got his best days in front of him.
And we need to look a little bit at London. I know it's, again, shaping a squad. But they're going to do it predominantly around youth, and they're doing that in two ways. They're bringing still through the young indigenous London players, so you've got the likes of Mason, Kate and Brown, but also you're sending some young players down there to further their education, and presumably that is the way ahead for kids like that.
Well, certainly I think there's Foster, Minns and Duckworth, but I think Minns and Duckworth will have some fun because they've played together since they were kids. I think Ducky told me he's 98 kilos. That's big for a winger, a 20-year-old. Thomas is 94. I think they could do what all lads did this year. The two combinations, Lynham and Crooks. I think you'll see something special this year off them two. They're both great athletes, both great kids. They've been in the lead system. They know what to do. Thomas burst onto the scene last year and made the England and unbelievable. So yeah, I'd have massive raps on what they can do. As long as again, London put the players together, or them young lads could be in an harsh reality.
That's a great point, Craig, because you know we talked about these other players at Wigan, etc., and at Leeds, and they're coming into established, settled systems and clubs. Well, at London, they're throwing a team together, no doubt about that. Yeah. You know, they didn't have a team at Christmas. They're to get a team together by the middle of February to play in Super League. And I hope it does work out for these young players, and they're very brave to take that challenge on, and I hope it's the making of them, but it's going to be a tough 12 months, believe you me.
Is there another Alex Walmsley that you've seen in the Championship, or somebody who's going to make their name in Super League next year? Is Alex going to kick on? Because obviously he got great raps for the work that he did, and Saints another club that have always given youngsters an opportunity.
They have, yeah. I mean, Alex, there's no doubt in my mind Alex will kick on, yeah, because it's not just what he does on the field. You've got to realise how good he is by what he does off the field as well, and he just works and he works, and he takes great note of his peers, and he takes great note of his coaches, and he's always he's like a sponge wanting to improve, so no doubt he'll improve. And as you said before, there are people in the Championship, many, perhaps one's gone to Castleford at the latter end of their career in Liam Finn, but there are lots of young ones as well who are asking for an opportunity, and Saints bang on. And I think this Adam Swift, it was over at, he first came to mind, I was at Whitehaven, he scored 3 tries against us at Batley. I thought, my word, where's he come from? And when I asked about him, he'd come from St Helens. He then established himself in the St Helens team, and he's a good wingman, so I'm looking forward to seeing him next year as well. And
Liam Carberry, a player who obviously is learning his trade in the academy at Wigan, has now gone to Widnes. Hopefully we'll get more of an opportunity. Players like that are in every club. I mean, we can talk through all the 14 clubs and you'll find this quality of youngster.
100%, and we keep using the word opportunity. We've got, I was writing these things down last night. I have a player called, he's at Warrington, he's called Ben Curry, and I think he's, since I've been doing it, and I have to be careful because I've got over 70 of the kids, so I don't want to be biased, but he's the best I've seen since I've been watching rugby. I saw him first of all as a 16-year-old kid playing in 20s. At Bradford he scored 3 tries, 2 50-yarders. As I hurdled the fence to get to his mum and dad and introduce myself as you do,
as you do,
I actually headlocked Steve McNamara, who actually sat behind us saying, who is that? So it was quite a funny thing. I couldn't believe what I'd seen. And not a second rower with that 6'2", 3 athletic hands. I spent a season watching him and I couldn't believe it. And then when you hear Tony and Tony Smith and John Bastian all say the same, and John's just said a great point. It's what they do away from the rugby. Listen, 17, you know, we've all done it as well as a match, where they've got to really dedicate themselves. And I talk about it a lot to them. What they do away from the game is a bit more important, is what they do there, because they're covered by everybody. They've got a boss, they've got assistant coach, they've got, when they're away on the streets and in the pubs and around their mates, that's when it has to be really thing. But he's got everything that I have ever seen to be. I think he could play. I've seen him play 6 in the grand final, I've seen him play 13 second row centre, and he actually won the sprints at Warrington, so that tells you what kind of animal you're getting. The NRL boys have already been on like you've never seen, and he's been tied up on a 4-year, but he'd be somebody who I'd put as a massive X factor.
Somebody like James Clare in your old position on the wing, would you be looking at him?
You would, yeah. I mean, James Clare, I thought last season, I thought him did himself a great deal of credit. He had an absolute stinker over at the KC Stadium against Hull FC, and I think they were putting bombs up on the first tackle because he just couldn't catch anything. He couldn't catch a goal that night, and he had an absolute stinker of a game. Then he came back into the first team towards the end of the season, and he showed what a good player he is. He's about 6'2", he's got plenty of pace, and I like that mental toughness. He's had a slap across the face, it's knocked him down, he's got back up and he stood tall, so you've got to admire him for that, and I think once again he can really feature strongly for Castleford. But they've also got a good halfback called Ben Reynolds. They're all talking about Sneyd, who they've signed, and Seymour and Luke Dawn. But this kid, Ben Reynolds, he's come through the system there, and he can't half play rugby league, and he's happy 6, 7 or 1. So at some stage, I'm pretty certain that Darryl Powell will say, well, Ben, get out there and strut your stuff, because he's a good halfback.
And presumably they've got one of the toughest tasks in rugby league this year to replace the irreplaceable. So they're going to have to play a different style anyway, and invest in somebody.
Well, you don't replace. I mean, what you've got to do then is you look at your personnel and you devise a different strategy, and that's what he's had to do, Darryl. You know, you can't give I think it was nicknamed Rangy Ball last year by Ian Millward, wasn't it? You give the ball to Rangy, he does what he likes, and everybody else reacts. Well, they can't play like that this year. They'll be much more structured and organised, and those halfbacks will have to fit into there. But I certainly think a Ben Reynolds can feature prominently as the season progresses.
Again, we take for granted perhaps people like Adam Milner, Darryl Clark maybe, because they're sort of seasoned professionals, but actually they're still at the very development stage of their career. Again, presumably the added responsibility they'll have will make them better players in 2014.
Well, Adam, I first seen Adam play in the Challenge Cup semi-final, I think, against Leeds at Doncaster Keepmoat, and I think he made about 38 tackles at 18-year-old, so I remember thinking, then I know he went down well in the England Academy. Adam's got a massive chance this year. He's been given the 9 shirt on the back of what's going to happen with Darryl. And I think he'll take it. Darryl has massive raps on Adam. Speaks to me regularly saying, you know what, if I can teach him the next level in good ball to play a bit more, I've got everything. I've got a competitor and a thing. But both of them, you just said what Castle do, they'll play round the ruck. Because if I had Daz Clark and Adam Milner, I'd be playing around that. I won't be. That'd be where you start, because I can see that being their strength. But Darryl's got massive raps on him yet, and you think he's older than he is. I think he's 20, 21-year-old, so I'm sure there'll be big things.
We were talking as well about you right at the beginning about you'd sent a couple of players over to the Antipodes. Well, one who's come back is Daniel Smith at Wakefield. Again, probably learnt a really good apprenticeship by being away over there, and even in the pre-season games has looked that he can hold his own at this level.
Well, I watched the Leeds game where I thought he played really well. He likes to play a bit. He's got great hands. Like they say, his brother Cameron's going to be the next Sam Burgess. By the way, he's 14. That's a tip for you. They're all saying the right stuff.
Is he with you, Greg?
He will be. No. Daniel, I watched him then, and on Boxing Day, on Boxing Day I watched him, and then the Featherstone match, I think he was one of the only 2 or 3 Wakefield players who got a rap. I watched him for 16 months at Leeds, and they were fantastic. But he seemed to carry a bit of weight. What I've noticed, they must have physically, my God, he looks a different animal when I saw him on Boxing Day, so fantastic. I want to see Wakefield start producing their own. You mentioned it earlier on. Is it Jowett, Max? I watched him play for England against the French. He looked fantastic. So come on, let's get behind Wakey, getting their own through.
And again, you look at Wakefield's size of squad, they are going to have to rely on some of these youngsters. Some of their overseas players won't come till a little later after the season, maybe has even bedded in a little bit. Some of the guys that get the squad numbers 21 to 29, they're almost as important for the limited time they may play as some of the top line players.
They are, very much so, yeah. I mean, your depth of your squad will determine where you finish ultimately, and there's no secret behind Wigan's success and Leeds' success and Warrington's success and Saints' success to be, which it will be over the next few years, I believe, with their youngsters. And it's all because when a youngster steps into a seasoned professional's place, there's not much of a dip at all, and people start sitting back and saying how exciting it is, and that's the challenge to shall we say the smaller clubs to get some of those on board. And I'm glad you mentioned Daniel Smith, because I like the way he plays prop forward. He's not the orthodox prop forward. He'll pre-line play, he'll offload, and he's got an engine as well. So I'm excited about him, but I agree with Craig as well. It'd be great to see Lucas Walshaw and Chris Anakin and Kyle Trout really seize hold, Matty Wilde as well, seize hold of an opportunity and become established Super League players.
You mentioned depth, and obviously one of the teams who've got the most squad numbers is Hull KR, who is not a team that we normally associate with that, but are people like Adam Walker going to kick on this year? You know, Matthew Baharrell has done well in the academy. They are at least giving these players numbers. You would hope they would give them the chance that goes with it.
Yeah, I think they will kick on, but I think a lot for Hull Kingston Rovers is the halfback situation, whether Keating can take Dobson, because he'll be the conductor. and the rest of them are in the orchestra, but they have got some good players as well who are coming through. I like Salter in the centre as well, and I like Kear Carlisle, who's always promised but not quite delivering. This might be the season for him to deliver. So there's lots of little things to look at with the Hull Kingston Rovers as well, and perhaps for the Robins fans to get excited about.
And you're a Francophile. Kevin Leroy on a season-long loan, a young Frenchman. That might not do him any harm.
He's a good player. Yeah, he's a good second rower, that fella, and he likes to play on an edge, and he hits a good line, and he's a big animal, he is, and he can really carry the ball aggressively. So I think he really will develop this year.
I think we're excited about youngsters in 2014, but Craig's more excited because he owns most of them.